quite natural for people who live on a planet whose dimensions are fixed to have impressed upon their consciousness the idea that we live in a world with real limits.
I can understand why the ordinary man in the street would be a little bit wary about grandiose population predictions. After all, the last thing I ever heard from demographers was we were on the throes of this population bomb.
Human numbers on the planet in the 20th century almost quadrupled, we think. And over this same period of time, the international inflation-adjusted price of rice and wheat and corn dropped by about 70%.
The population bomb was popularized by non-demographers and by the press back in the 70s, and real demographers, even back then, knew this world was coming that I'm talking about.
As a society, we don't like to talk about the causes of fertility decline. We don't want to possibly offend other people. The really chilling thing about demographic winter is that none of these causes could be easily fixed. It's who we are, who we have become increasingly in these postmodern times.
We came up in 1988 with an extremely simple indicator. I found it because I had the S&P 500 long-term on one side of my desk and the birth chart for the baby boom on the other side, and I realized the charts looked identical, put them together, 45 to 50-year lag. Take 1961, which was the peak year of baby boom births before births turned down, and add 48, the average spending, that gives you a peak around late 2009. So it really is that simple. Baby boomers earn and spend more money till around late 2009, and then they slowly earn and spend less money, and the stock market simply follows that, because it's not their savings and investment habits that drive the stock market, which some economists think. It's spending, because spending drives the earnings of companies.
A third problem is investments in medical, in new technologies for medicine and other ways. That's partly contingent on having a lot of potential consumers.
The projections for Western Europe are that the group 30 to 44 years of age is going to drop very significantly in size.
When you have declining number of consumers at different ages, you discourage research and development, productivity growth, which is the engine, fundamentally the engine of growth in any economy.
Why does that in particular matter? Because over the last century, it's people between the ages of 30 and 44 in all developed countries who've disproportionately been the innovators.
It seems a strange thing with population growth so important to society that we never hear about that side of the story. Could it be that we are simply not comfortable with how that story unfolds?
Young men are no longer motivated to marry and assume marital responsibilities for the sake of sexual gratification.
This new period of life has not been as good for men.
This is something that's readily available anyway.
Men have a harder time growing up, I think, without women than women do without men.
So if you're having a situation like in Europe where people are marrying at a very, very late age, and I mean 30, 29 years old for men and women, we have many, many people in the age of 25, 30, even 35 and more who are staying with their parents and are not forming families.
I call them child men. They are gamers, you know, spending 2+ hours a day playing video games.
We have a lot of especially cohabiting relations.
Reading Maxim magazine with all the silliness in there, watching cartoons on the Cartoon Network.
The male has no plans for marriage with this particular person. It's simply an arrangement of convenience.
Well, of course, it has a huge impact on fertility because people are delaying their first child. They're delaying marriage and then they're delaying their first child.